The evening settled over Thorn Ridge Station the way an old quilt settles over tired bones, slow, heavy, full of memories stitched into every fold. Lantern light trembled in the wind, throwing soft gold onto the wooden stoop where Maeve Calder stood, folding her apron with hands that had stirred pots for nearly 4 decades. The sky above her bruised into indigo, and in that color she felt something familiar, that soft ache of being out of place in a world that kept moving without her. She heard them before she saw them, the whispers carried by cold air. Old cooks slowing down. She takes up space. Burdens don't belong in winter cabins. Words like these always found her, somehow. They clung to her skirt hem like burrs, small and sharp enough to sting long after she thought she'd brushed them away. A freight wagon creaked nearby, and Tobias Granger's silhouette passed across the lamplight. He wasn't cruel, but his voice was the kind that spilled truths without filtering them. Shame Ronan's too kind to tell her. He muttered to no one in particular. Woman's been sitting by his fire, as if she's owed something. Maeve felt the words lodge in her chest, cold as river stones. She tucked her apron inside her small carpet bag and pulled her patched shawl around her shoulders. The wool smelled faintly of rosemary bread, her specialty back in the logging camps where men ate her cooking with gratitude, where her presence once mattered. But that was before time thinned her strength, before the world grew louder and she grew quieter. Across the station yard, Sheriff Luther Bram stood in the shadow of the telegraph post, arms folded, eyes narrowed. He wasn't unkind. He was simply the sort of man who believed everyone should know their place. And in his opinion, Maeve's place wasn't near a cabin belonging to a solitary mountain man like Ronan Holt. When his gaze flicked toward her carpet bag, Maeve lowered her eyes. Yes, she thought. He's right. It's time. She stepped off the stoop with silent resolve, boots crunching on frostbitten dirt. If she left now, quietly, Ronan wouldn't have to deal with town gossip, and she wouldn't have to see disappointment on his face. He had never asked her to leave, but he had never asked her to stay either. Hospitality was a natural reflex for a man like him. Nothing more. Inside the cabin behind her, the hearth was cooling. No stew simmered. No bread baked. The space would feel lighter without her clutter of spices and humming and worries. Maeve walked toward the road, breath fogging in the early night. People leave, she whispered to herself, when they've stayed too long. Far up the ridge, where snow still clung to the edges of pine branches, Ronan Holt was trudging down from the mountains, his coat dusted with white, the scent of cold clinging to him like a second skin. The trail behind him was steep, but he moved with the ease of a man shaped by the wilderness. When he reached the station yard, he paused. Something was off. The world felt empty. He stepped into the cabin, expecting to be greeted by the familiar warmth of stew simmering over embers. Instead, the hearth was dark, still the air stale. His stomach tightened, not in hunger but in unease. Maeve's apron was missing. Her shawl, too. The wooden spoon she always kept near the stove was gone. He stood still a long moment, his breath loud in the quiet cabin. Something had happened. Something that didn't belong. Down the road, Maeve walked slowly, every step sinking deeper into memory. Behind her eyelids flickered the face of Lily Mae Holt, Ronan's mother, laughing beside her in a logging camp kitchen. They had cooked for dozens of men, feeding them through seasons of fire and storm, leaning on each other like sisters. Lily Mae had been a fierce, bright thing with hands that could knead dough and break a man's pride in one afternoon. Maeve had loved her dearly, and when Lily Mae died in that river accident, Maeve had made a promise over the trembling waters. I'll watch over the boy. I'll keep him warm. But what good was a promise when the years had carved lines into her face and dulled her strength? Ronan didn't need an old cook lingering in the corner of his life. He needed to live without being smothered by her borrowed memories of his mother. Asterisk, I'm not keeping you. She had once overheard someone say, you're keeping yourself where you ain't wanted. So she kept walking. The road curved toward the canyon bridge, where sagebrush clung stubbornly to the earth. Maeve's breath came shorter now. Her knees had never forgiven her for the winters spent standing over hot stoves. She lowered herself onto a flat boulder overlooking the wide plains. The wind tugged gently at her gray hair, as if trying to get her attention. "Just a rest," she murmured. "Then I'll keep moving." She clutched her carpet bag tighter, eyes drifting across the vast horizon bleaching into twilight gold. Back at the station, Tobias Granger was still stirring up truths like dust clouds. Ronan approached him with calm, heavy steps. "Where's Maeve?" he asked. Tobias shrugged. "Left quiet as a ghost. Folks saying she felt she owed you. Or you got tired of keeping her." Ronan's jaw tightened. There was no shouting, no dramatic display, just a storm that gathered behind his eyes, dark and contained. He pushed past Tobias and strode through the town center. People watched him from doorways and porches, murmuring their theories. Maybe he threw her out. Maybe she ran before he did. Maybe she knew her time was up. Each whisper sharpened the fire gathering in Ronan's chest. He followed the road out of town, boots striking hard against the earth, lanterns swinging at his side as the night deepened. Maeve was still sitting on the boulder when she heard hoofbeats soften into the dirt. She turned her head slowly. A tall horse approached, breath steaming in the cold. On its back sat Ronan Holt, silent as ever, but his eyes burned with something she didn't understand. He dismounted carefully, keeping a respectful distance, as if she were a wounded doe and too sudden a move might make her bolt. "Maeve," he said, voice low, steady. "Why'd you leave?" She gripped her carpetbag until her fingers ached. "I don't want to be a burden," she whispered. The wind almost carried her words away, but Ronan heard them. The way his shoulders stiffened told her so. He took a single step closer. "You think that's what you are?" Maeve stared at the plains, unwilling to meet his gaze. "People have been saying—" He exhaled sharply, hurt, not anger. Then he knelt beside her, an unthinkably vulnerable gesture from a man like him. "When I came home and the house was empty," he murmured, "it felt wrong. Like something had been stolen." Her breath trembled. She didn't trust herself to speak. "Walk back with me," he said, "just until morning." Maeve hesitated, afraid of being wanted and unwanted at the same time. But his voice was steady, gentle, not a command but a hand extended. So she nodded once. And the two of them, one old, one solitary, both carrying ghosts of the same woman, began their slow walk back toward the cabin, the night stretching soft and silver around them. The canyon air was cold, but the moon poured a pale warmth over the trail, washing the rocks and sagebrush in silver light. Maeve walked beside Ronan, boots scuffing the dirt, her shawl drawn tight against the wind. The quiet between them wasn't empty. It was full of unsaid words, shared histories, and a gentle rhythm of two hearts learning to belong in the same space. "Your mother," Maeve whispered at last, her voice trembling. She was a bright thing. Strong. Brave. I promised her I'd watch over you. And her words faltered, caught between guilt and grief. Ronan didn't answer immediately. He simply listened, eyes fixed on the dark line of the horizon where canyon walls met the silver sky. Each step they took together was a small act of trust, his hand brushing hers as he adjusted a loose bundle of firewood, her steadying him on a rocky incline. There were no grand declarations, just gestures that spoke of protection, care, and the slow, careful building of a bond neither of them dared name yet. The road descended toward the edge of the plain, where the first flickers of town lanterns glimmered. They were small, distant, but enough to remind Maeve that the world beyond the canyon existed, and that judgment waited there like a coiled snake. Sheriff Luther Bram and a small crowd had gathered near Ronan's cabin, murmuring and whispering, curiosity mingled with suspicion. Maeve stiffened, her heart tightening with dread. "She's taking advantage of you," Luther called out, voice carrying over the cold night. "You've been kind enough, more than any man should be, but she's no kin to you. She has no claim here." Maeve shrank back instinctively, the old fear of being a burden surging through her chest. She glanced at Ronan, expecting him to falter under the weight of gossip and expectation. But he didn't. He stepped forward, boots crunching in the frost, broad shoulders squared, eyes blazing with quiet authority. "She's my family," he said, voice low but unwavering, carrying over the murmurs. She's my mom." The words fell into the night, like a bell tolling across the plains. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Clara Finch clutched her hands to her chest, eyes wide, and even Tobias Granger's mouth fell open. Maeve felt her knees weaken, the carpet bag slipping from her fingers. "Ronan," she whispered, voice trembling, tears pricking her eyes. I can't." He stepped closer, his hand finding hers, steadying her against the shiver that wasn't from cold. "Maybe not by blood," he murmured, almost a confession, "but by everything that matters. By every meal you've ever cooked, every night you've stayed when you could have walked away. By every moment you've been here, you're my mom." Time slowed, the wind softened, the lanterns flickered as if bowing to the weight of the moment. Maeve's chest lifted in a rush of disbelief and relief. The years of loneliness, of feeling unseen, of carrying shame like a second skin, seemed to dissolve in a single heartbeat. The sheriff muttered something under his breath, his authority rattled, and the townsfolk shuffled awkwardly, unsure of how to respond to the quiet dignity in Ronan's declaration. Clara stepped forward, smiling softly, and held out her hand. "Maeve, come help me with the bakery. The town needs your heart in it." Maeve's lips trembled in a smile. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not just tolerated, not just needed out of obligation, but truly, irreplaceably valued. Ronan placed her carpet bag back in her hands and rested a calloused hand gently on her shoulder. "You're staying," he said. They walked into the cabin together, the hearth glowing warmly, as if welcoming her home. The scent of pine, wood smoke, and the faint memory of years of cooking filled the space, wrapping around Maeve like a balm. She inhaled deeply, feeling something she hadn't felt in decades, belonging. Inside, Ronan moved quietly, stoking the fire, arranging chairs, leaving space for Maeve to take in the moment. She unpacked her few belongings, setting them carefully on the shelves and in drawers, feeling the slow, deliberate reclaiming of her life. Every action was small, but in each she felt her dignity restored, her place in the world affirmed. The night deepened outside, stars sharp and luminous against the dark sky. Ronan pulled a chair close to the fire and gestured toward it, a small invitation that spoke louder than any words. Maeve sat, warmth seeping into her bones. She looked at him, trying to memorize the lines of his face, the quiet strength in his gaze, the tenderness that had taken decades to show itself. They sat in silence, side by side, letting the world fall away, the gossip, the judgment, the loneliness. It was just the two of them, the crackling fire, and the quiet knowledge that bonds formed in action, in care, in shared hardship, could be stronger than any bloodline. And as the first light of dawn crept across the horizon, Maeve felt a new season bloom inside her, a slow, steady warmth that promised safety, belonging, and love without conditions. She realized that family wasn't just given, it was recognized, nurtured, and claimed in the moments when one dared to speak truth over fear. She turned to Ronan and smiled, a small, hesitant, but genuine curve of lips that carried decades of hidden hope. He returned it with a subtle nod, a quiet acknowledgement that no words were needed for the depth of what had been understood. Later, standing by the doorway and looking out over the plains, Maeve whispered softly to the night, as if addressing anyone who had ever felt unseen. "Maybe you felt it too, the fear of staying where you think you aren't wanted. But sometimes the people who need us most are the ones who don't know how to say it. Sometimes family is a word earned slowly through shared bread and quiet seasons, not names in a Bible. And sometimes," she paused, letting the wind carry her words across the frost-tinged grass, "all it takes is one brave soul to speak a truth you've been too humble to believe, that you were never a burden. You were the blessing." And with that, Maeve called her, once the quiet, aging cook who had feared she took too much space, finally felt the world unfold around her in warmth, recognition, and unshakable love. The mountain man, silent and steadfast, remained by her side, not as a master or protector, but as the son of her heart, her chosen family, and the keeper of her years of devotion. The fire flickered, shadows dancing on the walls, carrying their story into the quiet morning. Outside, the town breathed and waited. But inside, Maeve and Ronan shared a moment untouched by rumor, unchanged by judgment. A testament to the quiet power of loyalty, love, and the courage to claim one's place in the world. The story lingered in the air like smoke from the hearth, gentle, full of life, and unmistakably true.